The diplomatic station Harmony Point floated in the darkness of space like a metal flower with many petals. Each section housed different alien species, all trying to avoid war with each other. Today was different. Today, the most feared warriors in the galaxy were coming to talk about peace. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching the massive ships approach. His coffee had gone cold in his hands, but he did not notice. The HFY War fleet moved through. Space like hungry sharks, their black hulls scarred from countless battles. Even from this distance, Jake could see the weapon ports that had destroyed entire worlds. Nervous? Asked Captain Lisa Brown, joining him at the window. Jake shook his head. Curious. We have been fighting them for 3 years. Now they want to talk. Why? Lisa frowned. Maybe they are tired of war. Maybe they want something from us, or maybe this is a trap. Other alien delegates were already leaving the main areas. The Centauri merchants packed their belongings quickly. The peaceful Altarians had moved to the far side of the station. Even the proud vegan diplomats seemed worried. They are all scared, Lisa observed. Fear makes people stupid, Jake replied. If we want peace, someone has to be brave enough to try. The station's computers announced the arrival of the Zephyrian delegation. Jake finished his cold coffee and straightened his uniform. He had read every report about these aliens. They were tall, strong, and deadly. Their society was built on honor through combat. They had never lost a war. Until now. The humans had not beaten them, but they had not lost either. 3 years of fighting had cost both sides too much. That was why they were here. Jake walked to the main conference room. The other human delegates were already there, looking nervous. Admiral Scott Davis was checking his weapon for the 3rd time. Dr. Helen Parker was reviewing her medical scanner, ready to treat injuries. Remember, Jake told them, we are here to make peace, not to start another fight. The doors opened with a soft hiss. The HFY delegation entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. They moved like predators, each step calculated and smooth. Their scales caught the light, shifting colors from deep green to dark blue. Sharp claws clicked on the metal floor. The front walked their leader. She was taller than the others, nearly 7 feet high. Battle scars covered her arms and face like medals. Her eyes were golden, with pupils that could change size like a cat's. When she breathed, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. The other humans stepped back. Admiral Davis's hand moved toward his weapon. Dr. Parker's scanner began beeping as it detected the alien's elevated heart rate and body temperature. Jake stepped forward. Welcome to Harmony Point, he said, his voice steady. I am Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, representing Earth's diplomatic corps. The Zephyrian leader studied him with those golden eyes. Her scales rippled, changing from blue to orange, which Jake's briefings had told him meant surprise or confusion. I am Kethver, war leader of the Outer Rim Fleet, she replied. Her voice was deep, with a slight hiss on certain words. You are smaller than I expected, human, Jake smiled. Size is not everything. Some of the most important things are very small. Kethver's head tilted slightly. Her scales shifted again, this time to a purple color that Jake had not seen in any of the reports. The formal introductions continued. Each human delegate was presented to each Zephyrian. The aliens stood perfectly still, like statues made of living metal. The humans tried to look confident, but Jake could see the sweat on their faces. When the ceremony was finished, both groups moved to opposite sides of the room. The neutral area in the middle seemed very wide and empty. Your warriors look afraid, Kethver observed, her voice carrying across the room. They are diplomats, not warriors, Jake replied. But they are brave in their own way. Diplomats. Kethver spoke the word like it tasted bad. We have no such word in our language. What do you call people who solve problems with words instead of weapons? Weak, Jake nodded. We used to think that way too. Then we learned that some problems cannot be solved by fighting. Kethver's scales shifted to bright red. All problems can be solved by fighting. The strong live. The weak die. This is the way of the universe. Is it? Jake asked. Then why are you here talking instead of fighting? For the first time, Kethver was quiet. Her scales flickered between several colors before settling on a dark green. The other delegates began discussing the terms of the potential peace treaty. Jake listened with one ear, but most of his attention was on Kethver. She stood like a statue, but her scales kept changing colors. He wondered what she was thinking. During the first break, most of the humans gathered in a corner to whisper about their fears. The Zephyrians remained perfectly still, like guards on duty. Jake approached Kethver. Her golden eyes tracked his movement, and her claws extended slightly from her fingers. "Your scales are beautiful," he said quietly. "The way they change colors in the light?" Kethver's entire body went rigid. Her scales flashed through a dozen colors in seconds before settling on a silver that Jake had never seen before. "What did you say?" she asked. "I said your scales are beautiful." "The patterns are like art." "I am a warrior," Kethver said, her voice tight. "Warriors are not beautiful. Warriors are feared." "Why cannot someone be both?" Kethver stared at him. Her scales were still that strange silver color, and Jake noticed that her claws had retracted completely. "You are trying to confuse me," she said finally. "No, I am trying to see you as more than just a warrior." "I am nothing but a warrior." Jake studied her face. Despite the alien features, he could see something that looked like pain in her golden eyes. "I do not believe that," he said. Before Kethver could respond, Admiral Davis called for the negotiations to resume. As they walked back to their positions, Jake noticed that several other Zephyrians were watching their leader with concern. Her scales were still that unusual silver color. The afternoon session went poorly. The Zephyrians wanted complete surrender from all species they had fought. The humans wanted them to return captured territories. Neither side would compromise. "This is pointless," Admiral Davis muttered during another break. "They do not want peace. They want victory without fighting." Jake was not so sure. He had been watching Kethver throughout the discussions. Her scales kept changing colors and she seemed distracted. Several times he had caught her looking at him instead of paying attention to the negotiations. "Maybe they do not know how to make peace," he suggested. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Their entire culture is based on war. They probably have no idea how to negotiate anything except surrender." As the day ended, both delegations prepared to return to their quarters. Jake was gathering his notes when he felt someone watching him. He looked up to see Kethver standing nearby. "Human," she said. "Jake, my name is Jake." "Jake," she pronounced it carefully. "Why are you not afraid of me?" Jake considered the question. "Should I be? Everyone else is." "Even other Zephyrians fear me. I have destroyed fleets. I have conquered worlds. I am death given form." "Maybe," Jake said. "But you are also someone who agreed to come here and talk about peace. That takes a different kind of courage." Kethver's scales shifted to that silver color again. "You see something that is not there." "I see someone who is more than what others expect her to be." For a long moment they stood in silence. Then Kethver turned and walked away, her claws clicking on the metal floor. But as she reached the door, she paused and looked back. "Why do you call me beautiful, human?" Jake smiled. "Because beauty exists in many forms, even in warriors." Kethver left without another word, but Jake noticed that her scales remained silver until she disappeared from sight. The second day of negotiations began worse than the first. Kethver arrived with her delegation looking like she had not slept. Her scales were a dull gray color that Jake had never seen before. The other Zephyrians whispered among themselves. In their harsh language, Jake tried to catch her eye, but she avoided looking at him. When the formal session began, she spoke only about military matters, territory, weapons, conquered systems. Her voice was flat and cold. "The Zephyrian Empire requires acknowledgement of our victories," she announced. "The systems we have taken will remain ours. The fleets we have destroyed will not be replaced. This is not negotiation. This is reality." Admiral Davis slammed his hand on the table. "Those systems have billions of innocent people. You cannot just claim them like property. We conquered them. They are ours by right of strength. That is not how civilized species behave, Dr. Parker said quietly. Kethver's scales flashed bright red. Civilized? You call us uncivilized because we are honest about power? Your species has fought wars for thousands of years? Do not pretend to be peaceful. Jake leaned forward. She is right. Humans have done terrible things in war, but we learned from our mistakes. Learned what? Kethver demanded. That winning a war does not mean you have won peace. The room fell silent. Even the other Zephyrians stopped their whispering. Kethver stared at Jake, her scales shifting between red and that strange silver color. Explain, she said. Jake stood up. Earth had a war that lasted 6 years. We called it the Third World War. 60 million people died. Cities were destroyed. When it ended, the winning side took everything from the losers. Land, resources, dignity. As it should be, one of the other Zephyrians said. But 20 years later we had another war. The people we had defeated were angry. They wanted revenge. The war was even worse than the first one. We realized that crushing your enemies only makes them want to crush you back. Kethver's golden eyes never left Jake's face. So what did you do? We learned to share victory. When we won, we helped our enemies rebuild. We turned them into allies instead of keeping them as slaves. That sounds like weakness. It was strength, real strength. It takes more courage to help someone you have defeated than to simply kill them. The session broke for lunch. Jake watched Kethver leave with her delegation, still avoiding his eyes. He decided to try a different approach. Instead of going to the human dining area, Jake went to the station's central garden. It was a large space filled with plants from different worlds. Most aliens came here to relax and think. He found Kethver sitting alone near a fountain. Her scales were back to that gray color, and she was staring at the water without really seeing it. May I sit? Jake asked. She looked up, surprised. This is a public area. Jake sat on the bench beside her, leaving space between them. You look tired. Zephyrians do not get tired. Everyone gets tired. Even warriors. They sat in silence for a while. The fountain made soft splashing sounds. Other aliens walked past, but they stayed far away when they saw Kethver. Your words today, she said finally. About helping defeated enemies, do you really believe that? Yes, some of our strongest allies were once our worst enemies. It makes no sense. If you defeat someone, they should serve you. That is the natural order. Jake pointed to a tree nearby. That tree is strong, but it bends in the wind instead of breaking. Sometimes flexibility is stronger than rigid strength. Kethver's scales shifted to a pale blue. You speak in riddles. I speak in possibilities. Your people are great warriors. But what do you do when there are no more wars to fight? There are always wars to fight. Are there? What if there were not? What if instead of conquering, you protected? What if instead of destroying, you built? For the first time, Kethver looked directly at him. Her scales were changing colors rapidly, like a storm of light across her skin. You want to change us, she said. I want to understand you. There is a difference. Why? Jake thought about his answer. Because I think your people are more than just warriors. I think you have art, music. I think you have families, and friends and dreams. We have duty. We have honor. We have strength. What about joy? What about beauty? What about love? Kethver's scales went completely silver. Warriors do not need such things. Everyone needs such things. They are what make life worth living. A small group of Centauri merchants walked past, talking loudly about trade routes and profits. They saw Kethver and immediately went quiet. Hurrying away. They fear me, she observed. Yes, but fear is not the only way to earn respect. It is the only way I know. Jake stood up. Then maybe it is time to learn new ways. He started to leave, but Kethver called after him. Jake, what? Is your favorite thing about being human? He turned back. The ability to change. To become better than we were yesterday. That afternoon, the negotiations continued. But something was different. Kethver asked questions instead of just making demands. She wanted to know about human. Art, human music, human families. Why do humans create art? She asked. Dr. Parker answered. To express feelings that words cannot capture. To share beauty with others. To leave something good behind when we die. Zephyrians do not create art. We create victories. What do you do when the fighting stops? Jake asked. The fighting never stops, but it does. Right now, we are sitting in a room talking instead of fighting. What do you do in those moments? Kethver was quiet for a long time. We prepare for the next fight. That sounds exhausting. It is our way. But is it the only way? The session was interrupted by shouting from the corridor. A group of Centauri merchants burst into the room, their faces red with anger. We demand justice! Their leader shouted. The Zephyrians are planning to attack our trade routes. Admiral Davis stood up. What are you talking about? We intercepted communications from their fleet. They are planning to destroy our cargo ships and steal our goods. All eyes turned to Kethver. Her scales had gone bright red, and her claws were extended. Those are lies, she said, her voice dangerously low. We have proof, the merchant leader insisted. Audio recordings of your commanders discussing the attack. Impossible. I am the only one who gives orders to the fleet. Then you are lying to us all. This peace negotiation is a trap, the room erupted in angry voices. The other alien delegates began demanding explanations. Some started to leave, convinced that the Zephyrians could not be trusted. Jake stood up. Stop, everyone stop, the shouting continued. Jake walked to the center of the room. I said stop. His voice was loud enough to cut through the noise. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him. You are making accusations without proof, Jake said to the Centauri leader. Let us hear these recordings. We do not have them here. They are on our ship, then bring them. But until we can verify your claims, we will not make judgments. You defend them because you are weak, the merchant spat. The Zephyrians are using you. Jake looked at Kethver. Her scales were still red, but her claws had retracted. She was watching him with an expression he could not read. I defend the right to be heard before being condemned, Jake said. That is not weakness, that is justice. The Centauri leader stormed out, promising to return with proof. The other delegates followed, muttering about human foolishness and Zephyrian treachery. Soon, only Jake and Kethver remained in the room. Why did you do that? She asked. Because I believe you were telling the truth. How do you know I was not? Lying? Jake smiled. Because your scales turned silver when you were confused, not red when you were angry. Liars do not get confused by accusations they know are false. Kethver stared at him. You have been watching me. Learning my expressions. I have been trying to understand you. Why? Because understanding is the first step toward friendship. Friendship. She spoke the word like she was tasting something new. Zephyrians do not have friends. We have allies and enemies. What am I? Kethver's scales shifted through several colors before settling on that silver shade. I do not know. You are something new. The third day brought no formal negotiations. The Centauri merchants had not returned with their promised evidence. Other alien delegates whispered in small groups. Unsure whether to trust the Zephyrians or flee the station entirely, Jake found Kethver in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Her scales were a deep blue color that reminded him of Earth's oceans. She did not turn when he approached. Your people are angry with you, she said, without looking at him. Jake joined her at the window. Some of them. They think I am being foolish. Perhaps you are. I could kill you with one hand, but you will not. How do you know? Jake smiled. Because yesterday you asked me about human families. Killers do not care about families. Kethver's scales shifted to purple. You are strange, Jake Morrison. My friends just call me Jake, I told you. Zephyrians do not have friends. Then what do you call someone you enjoy talking to? Someone who makes you think about new ideas? Kethver was quiet for a long time. We have no word for that. Maybe. You should create one. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Jake noticed that Kethver's breathing had slowed, and her scales were a peaceful green color. "Tell me about your world," he said. "Zephyr Prime is harsh. The surface is mostly desert and mountains, water is precious, food is scarce. Only the strong survive to adulthood." "That sounds difficult." "It made us who we are. Every day was a battle just to live. When we discovered space travel, we found other worlds with easier lives. We took what we needed. What about now? Your empire controls hundreds of worlds. Do you still need to take from others?" Kethver's scales flickered between blue and green. I do not know. We have always taken. It is our way. But if you have enough, why continue taking? Because that is what we do. We are conquerors. Jake turned to face her. What if you could be something else? What if you could be builders? Instead of destroyers? I do not understand. Your people are strong and disciplined. You could protect other species instead of conquering them. You could help build things instead of tearing them down. Kethver's golden eyes met his. You want us to become weak, to serve others instead of ruling them. I want you to become complete. Right now, you only know half of what it means to be strong. Before Kethver could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the computer's voice announced a medical emergency. Medical emergency in Section C. All medical personnel report to Section C immediately. Jake and Kethver rushed toward the medical bay. They found Dr. Parker and several alien medics working frantically around a human figure on a stretcher. "What happened?" Jake asked. "Poisoning," Dr. Parker said without looking up. "Something in the air recycling system?" The victim had a severe allergic reaction. Jake moved closer and felt his heart stop. The person on the stretcher was unconscious, their skin pale and breathing shallow. "That is Commander Williams," he said. "He was supposed to replace me if anything happened." Dr. Parker looked up, her face grave. "Jake, I need you to sit down." "Why?" "Because you were exposed to the same air system. The toxin builds up slowly. Williams got a higher dose because he was in Section C longer, but you are showing early symptoms too." Jake suddenly noticed that his hands were shaking. His vision was becoming blurry around the edges. "How long do I have?" he asked. "Without treatment, maybe 6 hours. With treatment, we can slow it down, but we need a compatible blood transfusion to flush the toxin from your system." "What about the other humans? Different blood types?" "None of them are compatible with you." Jake sat down heavily. The room was spinning slightly. "So that is it then?" "Not necessarily," Dr. Parker said. "Some alien species have similar blood chemistry. We could try to find a compatible donor." "Which species?" Dr. Parker hesitated. "According to our medical database, Zephyrians have the closest match to your blood type." All eyes turned to Kethver. She had been listening in silence, her scales shifting rapidly between different colors. "You want my blood," she said. "Only if you are willing," Dr. Parker replied. "It is a simple procedure, but there are risks." "What risks?" "Blood sharing is considered sacred in Zephyrian culture. It is only done between family members or the most honored allies. If your people found out?" Kethver's scales went bright red. "They would consider it a betrayal of our people." Jake tried to stand, but his legs were too weak. "Do not do it. I will not let you risk your position for me." "It is my choice too?" "Make, Kethver, please. You have worked too hard to get where you are. Do not throw it away for a human you barely know." She moved closer to him. Her scales were that silver color again, bright and shimmering. "Why did you defend me yesterday?" she asked. "Because it was the right thing to do." "Even though it made your people angry?" "Yes. Even though you barely know me?" Jake met her golden eyes. "Yes." Kethver turned to Dr. Parker. "How much blood do you need?" "About 2 pints. It will not hurt." But the procedure takes time." "Then we should begin." Dr. Parker quickly prepared the medical equipment. Jake watched in amazement as Kethver rolled up her sleeve, revealing more of the intricate scale patterns on her arm. "This is not necessary," he said weakly. "You called me beautiful," she replied. "No one has ever called a warrior beautiful." The least I can do is save your life. The transfusion took 2 hours. Jake drifted in and out of consciousness, but he was aware of Kethver sitting beside him the entire time. Her scales remained that peaceful silver color. When Jake finally woke up completely, he felt much better. The shaking had stopped, and his vision was clear. Kethver was still there, looking tired but alert. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I owe you my life." "You owe me nothing. Among my people, blood sharing creates a bond. We are now ... connected." Jake sat up carefully. "What kind of connected?" "I do not know. This has never happened between a Zephyrian and another species before." Dr. Parker entered with test results. "The transfusion was successful. Jake, you should make a full recovery. Kethver, you need to rest and drink plenty of fluids." "I am." "Fine," Kethver said, but Jake noticed her scales were pale. "You are not fine. You gave up a lot of blood to save me." "It was necessary. No, it was generous." "There is a difference." 3 other Zephyrians entered the medical bay. They saw Kethver connected to the medical equipment and began speaking rapidly in their own language. Their scales were all bright red. Kethver answered them in the same language, her voice calm but firm. The discussion became heated, with the other Zephyrians gesturing angrily at Jake. "What are they saying?" Jake asked. "They are saying I have dishonored myself by sharing blood with an alien. They want me to return to the fleet immediately." "And what did you tell them?" "I told them that honor comes in many forms. That saving a life is more honorable than taking one." The lead Zephyrian, a male with particularly large scars, stepped forward. He spoke to Kethver in accented English. "You have compromised your position, war leader. The council will hear of this." "Let them hear," Kethver replied. "I did what I thought was right. You did what was weak. This human has corrupted your thinking." Jake tried to stand, but Kethver put a hand on his shoulder, keeping him seated. "Careful," she said. "You are still recovering. I will not let them blame you for saving my life." "You will not let them?" The scarred Zephyrian laughed harshly. "You are a weak human who needed saving. You have no authority here." "Maybe not," Jake said, "but I have gratitude. And I have respect for someone who risked everything to help another person." The Zephyrian's scales flashed bright red. "Respect? You dare speak of respect? I speak of honor, real honor. Your leader showed more courage in this room than most. Warriors show on battlefields. Courage? She showed weakness." "She showed strength. The kind of strength that builds instead of destroys." The confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Davis and several other human officers. They took in the scene quickly, noting Jake's condition and the medical equipment. "What is happening here?" Admiral Davis demanded. "Kethver saved my life," Jake said simply. "She donated blood when no one else could." Admiral Davis looked shocked. "The Zephyrian leader did that?" "Yes, and now her people are angry with her for it." Admiral Davis studied Kethver for a long moment. That was ... expected. "It was necessary," Kethver said. "Jake Morrison is important to these negotiations." "Is he?" the scarred Zephyrian asked. "Or is he important to you?" Kethver's scales shifted to that silver color again. She looked at Jake, then at her subordinate. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "there is no difference." The room fell silent. "Even." The medical equipment seemed to hum more quietly. Finally, Jake spoke. "Kethver, why did you really save me?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was soft. "Because you see me as more than a weapon. Because you called me beautiful. Because you make me think that maybe there is more to existence than conquest and death." The scarred Zephyrian's scales went from red to black. "You are no longer fit to lead us." "Maybe not," Kethver agreed. "But I am still learning what it means to be worthy of the title friend." She looked at Jake. "Is that not more important than being feared?" Jake recovered quickly over the next 2 days, but the atmosphere on the station had changed completely. The Zephyrian delegation was divided. Half of them still followed Kethver, while the others gathered around the scarred warrior named Jarek. Jake could see the tension in the way they moved. Kethver's supporters stayed close to her, their scales showing loyal blues and greens. Jorak's group kept their distance, their scales a hostile red whenever they looked at their leader. The human delegation was also split. Admiral Davis thought. Jake had been foolish to get so close to the aliens. Dr. Parker believed the blood-sharing had created a unique opportunity for peace. The other diplomats were simply confused. "This is getting dangerous," Admiral Davis warned Jake during a private meeting. "The Zephyrians are on the edge of civil war. If fighting breaks out, we could all be killed." "Kethver will not let that happen," Jake replied. "How can you be so sure? She is losing control of her own people. Because she is stronger than they think, and because she has learned that there are things worth protecting." Admiral Davis shook his head. "You're taking a huge risk, Jake. These are not humans. They are predators. So were we once. We learned to be better." The breaking point came on the fourth day. Jake was in the station's library reading about Zephyrian culture when alarms began sounding. Not medical alarms this time, but security. "Warnings. All personnel remain in secure areas," the computer announced. "Security situation in progress." Jake rushed toward the main conference room, where he found a crowd gathered outside the doors. Through the transparent walls, he could see Kethver and Jorak facing each other in the center of the room. Both had their claws extended. "What is happening?" Jake asked Dr. Parker. "Challenge combat," she replied grimly. "Jorak has formally challenged Kethver's leadership. According to their laws, it must be settled by single combat. To the death? Usually? Sometimes the loser is allowed to live in exile." Jake pressed closer to the wall. Inside the room, other Zephyrians had formed a circle around the two combatants. Their scales were all bright colors, showing excitement and bloodlust. Kethver looked calm, but Jake could see the tension in her posture. Jorak was bigger than her, with longer claws and more battle scars. He kept circling her, looking for an opening. "You have been corrupted by the soft human," Jorak declared, his voice carrying through the room's speakers. "You think their weakness is strength? You think their mercy is honor?" "I think," Kethver replied, "that you are afraid of change." "I am afraid of nothing. Especially not a leader who has forgotten what it means to be Zephyrian." They began to fight. Jake had never seen Zephyrian combat before. It was nothing like human fighting. They moved like liquid lightning, their claws flashing in the artificial light. Both were covered in cuts within minutes. "She is losing," someone whispered. Jake could see it too. Jorak was pushing Kethver backward using his size advantage. Her scales were shifting between red and orange, showing pain and stress. "I have to help her," Jake said. "You cannot interfere," Dr. Parker grabbed his arm. "It is against their laws. If you try to help, it will only prove that she is weak." Jake watched helplessly as Jorak landed a heavy blow that sent Kethver stumbling. Blood dripped from her arm onto the floor. "Submit," Jorak demanded. "Accept exile and I will let you live." "Never," Kethver hissed. They fought for another 10 minutes. Jake could see that Kethver was getting tired. Her movements were slower, her responses less sharp. Jorak was wearing her down, then something changed. Kethver stopped trying to match Jorak's aggressive attacks. Instead, she began to move differently. She dodged his strikes instead of blocking them. She used his momentum against him. She protected herself while waiting for the right moment. Jake realized what she was doing. She was fighting defensively, using strategy instead of pure aggression. She was fighting like a human would fight. "What is she doing?" Admiral Davis asked. "She is fighting smart instead of just fighting hard," Jake replied. The other Zephyrians were confused too. This was not how their warriors usually fought. There was less roaring, less wild slashing. Kethver moved like a dancer, always just out of reach of Jorak's claws. Jorak became frustrated. His attacks grew wilder, less controlled. He was using more energy but landing fewer hits. "Stand still and fight," he bellowed. "I'm fighting," Kethver replied calmly. "I am just fighting." Intelligently. She waited until Jorak overextended himself in a particularly wild swing. Then she struck, fast and precise. Her claws found the gap in his defenses and opened a deep cut across his chest. Jorik staggered backward, surprised. For the first time? He looked uncertain. You fight like a coward, he accused. I fight like someone who has learned that winning is more important than looking fierce. The battle continued, but the momentum had shifted. Kethver was no longer just defending. She was controlling the fight, choosing when to attack and when to retreat. Jorik was getting desperate. The human has made you weak, he shouted, lunging forward with both claws. No, Kethver said, stepping aside and striking his exposed flank. He has made me complete. Jorik fell to his knees, blood flowing from multiple wounds. He looked up at Kethver with hatred in his eyes. Kill me then, he said. Finish what you started. Kethver stood over him, her claws poised for the final strike. The room was completely silent. Even the station's air recycling system seemed to have stopped. Jake pressed against the wall, willing her to make the right choice. Kethver lowered her claws. No, she said, I will not kill you. The other Zephyrians gasped. Several began talking at once, their scales flashing confusion and shock. You must, Jorik said. It is the law. Then the law is wrong, Kethver replied. You challenged me, because you thought I had become weak. But true strength is knowing when not to kill. She turned to address the other Zephyrians. Jorik believed that my friendship with the human Jake Morrison had corrupted me. He was right. It has changed me, but not in the way he thinks. Her scales shifted to that silver color Jake had come to recognize. I have learned that there are many kinds of strength. The strength to fight, yes, but also the strength to show mercy. The strength to protect instead of conquer. The strength to build instead of destroy. You spare me? Jorik asked, struggling to his feet. I spare you because Jake Morrison taught me that defeating an enemy is not the same as destroying them. You are still Zephyrian, you are still my people. We need warriors like you, but we also need to learn new ways of being strong. Jorik looked confused. What do you want from me? I want you to help me lead our people into a new age. Not as conquerors, but as protectors, not as destroyers, but as builders. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Jorik, bleeding and exhausted, performed a formal bow. I do not understand your new ways, he said, but you have proven your strength. I will follow you. The other Zephyrians began changing their scale colors to show acceptance and loyalty. Even those who had supported Jorik were now showing the blue-green of submission to their leader. Kethver looked through the transparent wall directly at Jake. Her scales were bright silver, almost glowing. I fought for the right reasons, she said loud enough for him to hear. I fought to protect something worth protecting. The security barriers lifted and Jake rushed into the room. Kethver was bleeding from several wounds, but she was standing straight and proud. Are you all right? He asked. I am better than all right, she replied. I am free. Free? Free to choose what kind of warrior I want to be. Free to choose what kind of leader my people need. She looked around at the other Zephyrians who were watching her with new respect. Free to choose what kind of friend I want to be, Jake smiled. And what kind of friend do you want to be? Kethver's scales shifted to a warm gold color he had never seen before. The kind who learns from others. The kind who grows stronger. Through connection, not just through conflict. Dr. Parker approached with medical supplies. You need treatment for those wounds. They will heal, Kethver said. But more importantly, my people will heal too. We will learn to be more than just warriors. As Dr. Parker worked on her injuries, Kethver spoke to Jake quietly. When Jorik called me weak, I realized something. I was not fighting to prove my strength to him. I was fighting to prove my worth to you. You do not need to prove anything to me, Jake replied. You already have. How? By choosing to save a life instead of taking one. By choosing to build a bridge instead of burning it down. By choosing to be more than what others expected you to be. Kethver's golden scales shimmered. You still call me beautiful, even covered in blood and scars? Jake looked at her, standing proud despite her wounds. surrounded by warriors who now followed her not from fear but from respect. Especially then, he said, because now I can see all of who you are. The peace negotiations resumed 3 days later with a completely different atmosphere. Kethver's victory over Jorek had unified the Zephyrian delegation, but more importantly, it had shown everyone that change was possible. Jake sat across from Kethver at the negotiation table, still amazed by what had happened. Her wounds were healing well, and her scales showed the calm blue-green of someone at peace with themselves. "I have a proposal," Kethver announced to the assembled delegates. "Something different from what we have discussed before." Admiral Davis leaned forward. "What kind of proposal?" "Instead of a simple peace treaty, I suggest we create an alliance. Not between conquered and conqueror, but between equals." The room buzzed with surprised voices. Even the other Zephyrians looked shocked. "What do you mean?" Dr. Parker asked. "I mean that my people have been warriors for so long, we have forgotten how to be anything else. But Jake Morrison has shown me that there are other ways to be strong. We want to learn these ways. You want to change your entire culture?" Admiral Davis asked skeptically. "Not change it, expand it. We will always be warriors, but we can be more than that. We can be protectors, builders, friends." Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. "What exactly are you proposing? A cultural exchange? Your people can teach us about diplomacy, art, science. We can teach you about honor, discipline, courage. Together we can both become stronger." The discussions that followed were intense, but productive. For the first time, both sides were talking about possibilities instead of just terms of surrender. The breakthrough came when the Centauri merchants finally returned with their promised evidence. They'd played audio recordings that they claimed proved Zephyrian plans to attack trade routes. Jake listened carefully to the recordings. Something about them did not sound right. "These recordings," he said. "When were they made?" 2 days ago," the Centauri leader replied. "That is impossible," Kethver said. 2 days ago, my entire fleet was powered down for maintenance. No communications were possible." Jake studied the merchant's face. "You made these recordings yourself, did you not? That is ridiculous. You wanted to prevent peace between humans and Zephyrians. You thought if we kept fighting each other, we would not notice your illegal activities?" Dr. Parker pulled up the station's security logs. "Jake is right. The Centauri ships have been using this confusion to raid medical supplies. From neutral transports?" The Centauri leader's face turned red. "You have no proof." "We have the proof," Kethver said calmly. "My ships have been tracking your movements. We just did not know why until now. You were spying on us. We were protecting trade routes. Something we have decided to do instead of raiding them." The Centauri delegation left in anger, but their departure actually helped the negotiations. The other alien species could see that both humans and Zephyrians were committed to justice, not just their own interests. Over the following days, the framework for the alliance took shape. Zephyrian warriors would help protect peaceful species from pirates and raiders. Human diplomats would help resolve conflicts without violence. Both species would share technology and knowledge, but the real test came when the station's sensors detected an approaching pirate fleet. 12 ships, heavily armed and heading straight for Harmony Point. "They must think we are weak because we are talking peace," Admiral Davis said grimly. "How long until they arrive?" Jake asked. 4 hours. Not enough time for reinforcements to reach us. Kethver stood up from the negotiation table. "My fleet is here. We can defend the station? Against 12 ships, you only have 6. 6 Zephyrian ships," she corrected. "That should be enough." "Admiral." Davis looked doubtful. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. But I want to try something different." "What?" "I want Jake Morrison to help coordinate the defense." The room fell silent. Jake stared at her. "I am not a military commander." "No, but you are a strategist. You think differently than we do. You see possibilities we miss." "Kethver, I have never commanded a space battle. Neither have I commanded one alongside a human. We will learn together." Admiral Davis protested. "This is insane." You want to risk the entire station on an untested partnership? I want to show everyone what cooperation can achieve, Kethver replied. If we succeed, it will prove that our alliance is real. Jake looked around the room at the faces of the other delegates. They were frightened, but also hopeful. This was their chance to see if peace could be stronger than war. All right, he said, let us try. The next 3 hours were intense. Jake and Kethver worked together in the station's command center, coordinating the defense. Jake suggested using the station's position near the gas giant to their advantage. Kethver showed him how to use Zephyrian battle formations. Your people fight like individual hunters, Jake observed, watching the fleet formations. Yes, each ship is independent, strong alone. But what if they work together like a pack? What if they supported each other? Kethver's scales shifted to that thoughtful silver color. Show me. Jake outlined a strategy that used the Zephyrian ship's individual strengths while having them work as a coordinated unit. Instead of each ship attacking separately, they would move together, covering each other's weaknesses. This is not how we normally fight, Kethver said. It could be how you fight better. When the pirates arrived, they expected to find a divided station defended by ships that would not work together. Instead, they found a unified defense that seemed to anticipate their every move. The Zephyrian ships moved like dancers, each one perfectly positioned to support the others. When one ship was under heavy fire, 2 others would move to protect it. When the pirates tried to surround them, the Zephyrians would shift formation to cover all angles. Jake coordinated from the station, using the sensors to track pirate movements and suggest tactical adjustments. Kethver relayed his suggestions to her ships, adapting them to Zephyrian fighting styles. Enemy ship moving to attack the station directly, Jake reported. Jorak, intercept and disable, Kethver ordered. Disable? Jorak's voice came through. The communications system. Not destroy? Disable? We are protectors now, not destroyers. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, 8 pirate ships had been disabled and captured. The other 4 had fled. Not a single defender had been lost. In the aftermath, as they helped rescue pirates from damaged ships, Jake asked Kekve what had made the difference. We fought as one instead of many, she replied. We protected each other instead of just attacking the enemy. And how did that feel? Her scales shifted to that warm gold color. It felt like what fighting should be. Not about destroying, but about protecting what matters. The successful defense convinced the remaining skeptics. Over the next week, representatives from dozens of species came to Harmony Point to join the new alliance. They had seen what cooperation could achieve. The formal treaty signing took place in the station's main hall. Jake stood beside Kethver as they both signed the document that would change the galaxy. I have something to tell you, Kethver said as they prepared for the ceremony. What is it? I have been offered a new position. Joint Commander of the Alliance Defense Force. I would work with human officers to protect peaceful species throughout the galaxy, Jake smiled. That sounds perfect for you. It would mean working closely with humans for many years. Learning your ways, teaching you ours. And I want to know if you would be my partner in this work. Not just as a military advisor, but as a friend. Jake looked at her, standing proud in her formal armor, her scales showing the deep blue of sincerity. I would be honored, he said. During the ceremony, as they stood before representatives from 40 different species, Kethver asked Jake the question that had started their friendship. Do you still call me beautiful, human? Jake looked at her, no longer seeing just a feared warrior, but a leader who had learned to use her strength to protect others, a friend who had risked everything to save his life, and a being who had grown beyond what anyone thought possible. I call you extraordinary, he replied, because you chose to become more than what you were. Kethver's scales shifted to that silver color one last time. You taught me that beauty comes in many forms. The beauty of strength used to protect. The beauty of courage used to change. The beauty of friendship that makes both people stronger. And what did I learn from you? That true strength is not about being feared. It is about being worthy of trust. As the ceremony concluded and the alliance was officially born, Jake and Kethver stood together, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was still full of dangers, but now it was also full of possibilities. "Ready for our first mission?" Jake asked. "With you as my partner," Kethver replied, her scales now showing the steady gold of contentment. "I am ready for anything." The war between their species was over. The friendship between two individuals had shown that even the deepest differences could be bridged by understanding, respect, and the courage to see beyond fear. And in the vast darkness of space, their alliance would be a light that proved peace was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all.